Well, thank you everyone for attending our very first webinar for the month of June. Today's session is called Connecting the Dots, Design and Trend Directional Overview with Judd. He's the Senior Director of Industrial Design for Delta Faucet. And I want to also generously thank Amarok for their sponsorship for all of our webinars for the month of June. And that said, I'd like to present Peter Wells. He is the Senior Principal Designer with Amarok, and he's ready to talk to us. Peter, if you're there, we're ready to roll. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you, Debbie. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining NKBA's webinar series and today's session. I'm happy to be here on behalf of Amarok to thank you for participating. A little bit about Amarok, if you're not familiar with us. For over 90 years, Amarok has been dedicated to bringing you the latest in kitchen and bath decorative hardware that is very trendy, stylish, and unique, offering the latest finishes and merchandising tools to support your design selection needs. We are very much involved in the kitchen and bath industry through NKBA Association and others, and we are very happy to sponsor this month's webinar series. We believe continuing education is an important part for all of us to not only get educated, but to get energized, to do what we all love to do every day. So after the CEU webinar, take the time to get to know us. We are located on most social networking outlets and included in interior design software like 2020 and Envision for designers and builders. As well, you can find us at amarok.com, or you can reach out to our customer care team, which Debbie will provide an email for after this webinar. Thank you and enjoy.
Thank you so much, Peter. And Judd, I know you're there, so let me just say that Judd Lord is with us today. He's a Senior Director of Industrial Design with Delta Faucet. And Judd, we are ready to get started. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, Debbie, and thank you to Amarok for allowing me to chat with you guys today. I've got a little presentation here, and we call it Connecting the Dots because of kind of I'm going to show you guys a little bit about kind of how we approach things from a design perspective on the product side, and kind of share with you some of the findings from a trend perspective, from macro all the way through the micro portion of that. So I'm going to share with you some of the approaches of what we look at from a design perspective, share with you some of the trends from the macro perspective to the micro perspective. It'll be kind of interesting to, if you manage to stay awake through the end of this, I'll be happy to field some questions. I think Debbie, who's going to be the wizard behind the curtain, is going to kind of keep track of everything, and we will just go from there. So like I mentioned, we're going to look at a little bit about kind of who we are, our approach, our inspiration, some of the trends. The studio within our company, it's somewhat of an interesting setup. So we've got all of our my team and a lot of our entire R&D group is all together, which is a lot of fun, and it's very fast paced, and we're looking at the entire portfolio from beginning to end, from next year all the way through the next 10, 15 years. And so we've got all of our electrical engineers, really creative mechanical engineers, program managers, marketing folks, guys looking 5, 10 years out, research components. They're all housed in one area, so we're really able to have a lot of fun with what we do. And just giving you a view of just my team in particular, we said we get to have a lot of fun. I don't know a product designer that doesn't have a lot of fun, but we certainly enjoy what we do every day, and we are hating life right now. I'm sure most of you are as well, just being stuck at home, because so much of design relies upon the ability to collaborate and just those 30-second to 1-minute conversations that you can have, or where you're stuck on a design and you can ask the other folks around you to come help you fix what's wrong, and why doesn't this look right. And so we're really missing that, but we're all making do the best we can, and we still have a lot of fun even online, trying to move the ball forward. So really part of what we do as a team. And I kind of put this whole section together because there's still a lot of people, like to this day, my mother still thinks I'm some sort of engineer. And I'm past the point of explaining it to her, so I just let her believe what she wants to believe. But in terms of trying to explain what design is to a lot of people, and I know most of you folks out in the audience are designers yourselves, but there's a lot of creativity, and so you guys all understand this, right? You have this functional component and you have this emotional component, and you're really trying to, especially nowadays, get to that end user experience, right? It's all about, solving problems, meeting unmet needs, identifying them and meeting them and fixing those issues. And this graph just kind of shows a little bit about when I first started over 27 years ago. The entire industry was, and a lot of design in general, was always you would get hired in as a designer, and then you were just designing the what. And for us, that meant plumbing products. And so if you had a faucet, you just designed another faucet, right? So there's just a lot of iterative stuff, and you didn't have any real breakthroughs. And the way things have changed over the past 2 decades has been, we as a design group in particular, we design for the why, because what you discover is people buy why you do something, they don't buy what you're doing necessarily. So and by looking at the why, you get asked different questions, right? So you're starting to try and, instead of creating objects, now you're trying to look at how people live, you're looking at those spaces, what you're doing in there, and you're trying to create these inspiring experiences, and it makes you ask different questions than, just replacing the same old. So, now you're looking at how, and this is really for any field, how can we make your day better? We look at how can you make your shower be more relaxing or maybe more invigorating, or, looking at making tasks easier, simpler, more enjoyable, more efficient in these spaces. And we're looking for how do you make that house a home? How do you, it's all about, a lot of you designers out there, it's about bringing those personalities into the space, and really trying to make that emotional human connection. And so as a part of that, when we kind of look at how we approach things, I put this slide together, and I still laugh a little bit at myself every time I do, because the first bullet point here is understanding people, which, it looks good on a slide, and it looked good at the time, but the more I think about it, does anybody really understand people? We're all kind of crazy and nuts and, off the deep end most of the time anyway. Understanding water, now that I can do because it has to follow laws of physics. So I'm much, better able to get my hands around what I can do with water. But it's just kind of trying to put those two components together the best you can and figure out how you can use water, which is such a great medium to work with. I can't imagine anything better. It's got so many emotions attached to it. How do you use that medium, with your products to transform design? And I can't remember where I stole this graph from, but it's one of my favorites all time. And I found this years ago. I ran across it because you guys have all been there. You've been in design schools, and the education processes can be very formal sometimes. And the professor's like, "Oh, you must do step A, then step B, then step C," and there's all these different ways. And sometimes you just find yourself really overthinking stuff. And in the end, what design is all about, and what we love about it so much and have so much fun, it's you've got a vision, you've got inspiration, and then there's problems and there's issues that you want to start solving. So you start creating these concepts, and then as you create these concepts, and you're putting all your human factors and ergonomics and aesthetics all into play, and you're trying to do things, you get into this messy middle where you're doing design and you're doing building, and and we're getting you get products out in front of the end users, the consumers, the influencers such as yourselves, and we're trying to figure out what's going to be the best thing to get out to that market. And in the end, right, the outcome was you'd spit out this product, but really, per what I was just kind of saying, the goal nowadays is you're looking to spit out this experience. And so it's so vital and important, because now instead of just replacing the same old, you're looking at these spaces, and now it's making you think differently. So you're looking at not just replacing a one-for-one. Now you're saying, wow, we need to create new products or enhance spaces or bring in new technology or innovation to do things that consumers might not even know they need, and we can make those spaces better. So we're looking at what we can do today. So one of the ways that we get at making these spaces better, and a big part of what we do within the studio, is we go through a lot of design research. A lot of the stuff that you might think about where you're just doing beauty contests at the end and you're asking people to pick out their favorites and stuff like that, and you're doing a lot of the brainstorming stuff up front. But one of the things that we'll do, every few years or so, we do these large, we call them observational researches, where we will take cameras, and we'll go into people's homes, and we'll set them up in these different areas, and we will film them for quite some period sometimes. And I'm always amazed at what people let you film for the betterment of the human experience in the kitchen and bath. But there is a whole section of people out there who are more than happy to invite you into the home, and you get to observe how they live. And that's where you get into these observations, and you start identifying these pain points that people don't even realize are pain points until you can bring a solution to that space. And then they realize, oh my God, I can't believe I lived without this all these years, kind of thing. So you're trying to use technology in such a way that you're not forcing people to relearn and do things differently. You're just trying to do things that are seamless in their lives, but it just makes life easier and maybe more efficient. We do a lot of technology scouting. I mentioned our studio has a lot of top minds in engineering. We got a resident scientist in there. We are always scouring, looking for, we come up with these, we identify these unmet needs. What kind of innovation technology we're going to bring to play. And like I said, we'll do a lot of brainstorming activities. Sometimes we'll bring in a lot of experts, psychologists, and we'll bring in shopping experts. We obviously bring in lots of designers, and we'll bring in, various influencers, and we really, try to get down into the soups and nuts of, these environments and these spaces. From a technology standpoint, I pull up some of this stuff and this is going to speak to a little bit what I'm going to get into in the second part of the presentation, which is this really focusing on those end users. And as you can imagine, as product designers, as designers yourselves, that's really the key focus. It's always that end user. And so you're looking at this, it started a while ago, but you have this continuous groundswell that does nothing but continue to grow, this need for originality. And, I threw an example up here. It's a simple handle that was done. And, the inserts are, there's several inserts that are offered for this handle, but we've also now provided, there's a template that if somebody, wants to match their, a certain wood species in their bathroom or a wallpaper or a countertop, the template is there for their contractor to actually create these, and they can just drop these in. So you can, it allows people to customize their spaces, which is really key component to what end users are demanding and expecting in this day and age. And it's wonderful from my standpoint. I know most manufacturers they dread this because, right, every mass manufacturer wants to do one thing 1 million times and just improve it and never change it. We love it as designers because the world is changing and it's fast, and it's all this craziness is constantly happening, and you want the customization, right? And so it's forced, all of us manufacturers to become more nimble and adjust to these needs. And so, and now the technology and the innovation is finally allowing us to bring a lot of this stuff to our end users without, killing them in price and stuff, right? So it's the technology is finally allowing us to do the things we need to do. I pulled some examples that have nothing to do with plumbing products about how fun it is. We're always looking for different innovations in different areas and how it's being approached. And, one of the things we've been looking at from just an overarching trend perspective is everything is connected. Everything is smart. Everything's talking to each other. But what's interesting is there's still a desire for that. And what we've been seeing is more that analog approach, that it's all digital, it's all talking, but it's got more analog interface, or it's got some familiarity, or it's hidden completely and seamless. So like the sunglasses you see there in the lower right they're actually, it's Bluetooth. You got a speaker in the arms, and you're able, and a little microphone, and you're able to have conversations. You don't have to have messy wires and all this stuff. And they're, so it's styling, and you can, you don't have to look like you're completely, you've got, you're from the Matrix, or you have all these wires hanging off you. Just strange technology. Like, who would have thought years ago that plant-based foods would be so big right now? And look how it's been changing this industry. And so that's the kind of stuff. Does that have anything to do with, don't expect, decorative plumbing products to be made of, vegetable meat anytime soon. But I'm just saying it's just one of those fun, interesting ways that a technology can transform an entire area or industry. Same thing with fashion, where you're bringing that technology into it. You're looking at the like the Levi Strauss jacket, right? That was designed for urban bike riders. It's got the microphone in the collar and earpieces in the collar and the sleeve, so you can just raise your sleeve and talk right into it. So you don't have, again, it's making the technology invisible and seamless, and a lot more practical. You've got fabrics now that are heat and temperature sensitive, so you can see on the left hand side the handbag there, and of course the dress that the model's wearing there on the left hand side, which I think is really cool. You can change all these colors. I don't necessarily. I love the idea of doing some of the color changing. And so I don't know if I necessarily want to see myself, where I'm pitting out my shirts being highlighted any more than what it is. If I'm out on a hot day, but so be it. I think for the handbag, I'm good with it. As we get into, more other practical uses from our standpoint, we'll look at what we can do, and especially like this, some of the advanced manufacturing, right? The 3D printing. That's one of those technologies that is now allowing us as manufacturers to come in and do things we could never do before, to design and create forms and objects and make them work differently than we could never do with our conventional methods that we've been constrained with for all these years. So, I mean, this is, just an example of doing things where it's so thin and streamlined, and, there's no way to do this by conventional means. And we take that observational research, where this was a powder room faucet, where one of the areas we went to look at, you'd watch people utilizing the product in the powder room, and you realize nobody stands there and turns on the hot water handle and waits for the water to get completely hot before washing your hands. Especially if they're, most people, you're turning it on really fast, you're washing your hands, you're drying them, and you're getting out of there as quick as you can, usually getting back to your guests or getting back to, the party, whatever it is. So there really wasn't a need to do handles. So you can see in the bottom, we start out with handles. But when we started looking at the research, we said, we just need this really cool, slim shape, and we just need the spout. And it just needs to be, provide a nice kind of lukewarm mix of water. And because people are just in and out of the powder room so quickly. So it's just kind of combining all of these together. When you look at how, the technology, meets design and what we can do with that, and in combination with that research. And from the nuts and bolts of it for us, once we have a lot of this stuff, we've identified some of these, hey, we need different types of products in these spaces. It all boils down to still, first and foremost, the actual product. What are we going to design? And a large part of how we approach things is we do a lot of travel. So my team in particular, they are responsible for, I try and kick them out of the country. They got to leave at least twice a year. And we always kind of split up in teams of 2s or 3s, and we cover different shows. And they have nothing to do with plumbing products at all. We're looking at what's fashion and furniture and automotive and gift fairs and coverings and lighting. All of these areas that don't have anything to do with plumbing products, because we want to know what's going on with the rest of the world and the spaces around, because that's going to determine kind of where we want to be going with our stuff. So we obviously, this was just some snapshots of some of the shows. I just threw some examples. We work with one of the top trend spotting firms here in the U.S., but as a part of that, when you do these travels, we customize these reports. And so you're going to see like a real Cliff Notes version of these reports here in a minute. But we come away, and you can see here in the kind of on the top left, you can see Alejandra, Ben, and Maris all they hit. They went. I think they're in Frankfurt and Berlin and Amsterdam this past year. And I just threw. But these are just everybody's doing different images, and we'll break things into kind of. We'll look at the culture of these spaces. We're looking at architectural details, which is where my eye tends to be drawn. You'll see a lot of stuff that has to do with colors and finishes and materials, where I know Ben and Maris are very key on these kind of things. And it's also one of those reasons that it's good to travel in more than just one, because you guys all know how it is. You can all go to the same design schools, and you can take the same classes and have the same professors, but really design is all about your own experiences and thoughts and feelings and those emotions that you're bringing into play, that you're internalizing and then bringing that out to the world. And so everybody's got eyes for different things. And I'm amazed at how many times I'm traveling with somebody And we get back to the studio, and I'm old school, so I have to print everything out. We'll print everything out on paper, and we'll throw it out either on the floor of our studio or these huge tables we have, and we'll start grouping and looking at trends and looking for patterns. But I'm amazed at when I'm looking at the images that I took versus the images of my travel companion took, and I'm like sometimes, what country were you in? Because they've got stuff photographed that I didn't see. I had no idea. And that's where you get, that well-rounded view of those places where you're visiting, and you bring that into your designs. From that trend perspective, you find that inspiration and you're pulling all that stuff together. And, one of the key things that we're looking at is we try to connect these dots. And we call it this because I've got a bit of an eye chart here, and I'll get into more of this later. But in the old days, if you look on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see it's just that interior, trends. And when I first started, that's all we looked at. We just looked at what was happening in the interior of the homes. And it really kind of started, there was a change. It kind of started with when the Gen Xers started coming into their own financially and started becoming drivers of, home purchases and renovations and so forth. And because I don't know if you guys remember, years and years ago, I still probably in the 80s and into the 90s, it was nothing for somebody to go buy like a Victorian era home, like a tried and true gingerbread looking Victoria era home, and they would move in and they would gut it and they would put in post mod. Complete disassociation from the exterior of the house. And to me, that never made sense. It still to this day kind of makes the hair on the back of my neck stand on end just thinking about what people were doing. But nobody batted an eye. But it kind of started with that Gen X generation. We kind of thought, you know what, I want the exterior, the interior to relate to the exterior. I don't want this weird, Twilight Zone world of, seeing something on the outside and then going to the inside and seeing something completely different. And so that's when we started following these end users and these, and so you can see there's kind of 4 that we've been following the past couple of years there on the left. And then we actually now pay attention to what kind of homes are they, what elevations are they asking for? And what are they asking for when they're having them built, or what are they looking for in terms of the current housing stock? And the millennials are such an interesting group. They're in their own power right now from a buying perspective. And they're kind of the opposite of what a lot of the stereotypes that you might think in terms of what they would prefer. And we'll get into a little bit of that here as we move forward into this. So what's really interesting is now you don't have all these completely disassociated interior trends where none of them actually blended, to a point now where you have this interlocking and the meshing of trends. And there's really several, it's mid-century mod, Art Deco, and industrial that kind of depending on how much of one you sprinkle in versus another, you're getting a certain trend that used to be known, that might have been known more stereotypically as contemporary or modern, or the stereotypical traditional, or the stereotypical casual. The stereotypes really don't exist anymore and haven't for a while. And now you're getting into, these things like terminology that I never, when I first started, ever thought I would hear myself using, like putting the words cozy and modern together, or edited and eclectic, or polished and casual, or it's just stuff that doesn't seem to make sense. But you guys know it's all kind of, there's blending that's happening, and it's really just kind of that, like I said, the different amount of flavor of some of these and whatever combination that might push them more to a little bit more modern to what might be a little bit more traditional. So the first group, and I'm not going to go through each of these specifically, but the first group is, I'm going to start with kind of what the quote unquote more contemporary end of the spectrum. And it's still, at this end, it's still this progression to less visual clutter. So less visual clutter in the space, the objects in these spaces are a little bit simpler. It's not just fewer of them, but they're a little simpler in nature as well. But one of the key differences, and you're going to find this through each one of these main groups, is that there is a drive to have things that aren't completely polished. There is all of these groups, that imperfect is the new perfect, and you'll see in all of these trends they're going to have this. And all of these trends typically show livable. There's no trend right now that's stodgy or formal where you feel like, you have to put plastic on the sofa to sit down, right? All of these are all about real life, every day, being comfortable and living. Even at the modern end of the spectrum, it's all about that. And so in terms of this mood maker group that is really kind of towards this end where they are still a little bit more minimalistic in nature, you're seeing a lot of the elevations they're looking at are the mid-century modern derivatives and the luxe shed and the modern prairie style homes. And something else you're going to notice in the elevations I'm going to show you in all of these trends is there are no more flat facades. If they're building, there are no more flat facades. All of these homes are moving out in the X, Y, and Z directions. And one of the other things you're going to notice in these is asymmetry. This group is completely comfortable with asymmetry, which flies in the face of what you're taught in design school, where you're told humans naturally gravitate towards the warm hug of symmetry. But you guys know as designers that, if you've got asymmetry and it's done right, it really provides some visual interest that is very appealing. And so you're seeing that asymmetry like you've never seen before, especially in new homes in a lot of cases. And so you can kind of see these. One of the other things you're going to notice, multiple materials. There's usually a minimum of 2 different materials, and you're oftentimes going to find 3 different materials or textures or colors within these homes to provide this interest as well. So that for this group, the mood makers, we call this what's happening in the interior of these spaces. We're calling it kind of a breezy bold. And if you see on the top left-hand side, the trend where we were at was called modern raw. And again, that it still is, we're a continuation of the raw was for think of the stuff that looked, rough-hewn boards and, truth in materials and stuff like, such like that. Whereas now you've got this, it's modern, but it's, as I said, it's comfortable, it's mellow, it's softer, it's warmer, it's a little more feminine in terms of the mid-century vibes that are happening. You see the color palettes, you get a sense they're much more muted, more into pastel hues. It's livable and curved shapes. You're going to see lots of curved shapes, either in furniture, countertops, like we stay at that pic of the Kimpton Hotel bathroom there in the bottom there. But even like doorways, archways, you're going to see arches and arcs everywhere coming up, and so we're trying to capture a little bit of this. And then that you can see the lever handle there. Look at how imperfect that is. It looks like it's been beaten or dinged, like it's just like it's a piece of raw wood that's been metallized. So that is still in the modern end of the spectrum. It kind of creates this new century deco feel. And then I've just got a couple of slides that I just try to capture. When we're breaking down our trend reports, we're looking at the color. So again, look at those pastels. And it's colorful and fun, but it's still muted to a certain degree, with, and cools are very neutral. It's warm and cool neutrals, both being used at the same time. Finishes, right, we look at a lot of these. We call them moody metals. So the warm brasses are still going to be there, whether they are polished or brushed. The burnished things that look like, again, that they've had an issue, like bronzes and things that look like they've been burnished or even tarnished. They've got these, dark. The silver metals have gone darker. When you think of that, the black chromes and the black stainlesses and so forth like that. So you're looking at the materials are cerused oak and all these some of these espresso tones mixed in here to add some punch. And then we look at things like patterns. Some of these modern deco geometric patterns that we kind of been seeing throughout this past year, popping up even more and more. And like I said, the environment is really kind of modern, going with a bit of a deco flavor with it. And again, arches are kind of the main theme throughout all of the current trend of what we've seen ramping up right now. And then this past slide is just kind of a summary slide where in our report, we're looking at basically 100 slides on one slide. So if you squint, you kind of get a sense for, what this modern kind of quote unquote the modern end is a little bit more about right now, that from what we are observing. So the next group, we call them cultural anthropologists. And this is really derived from the fact that, the world is at your fingertips. And you can be at home, but you are able to, you are clued in, right, as an end user. You know what the fashions are in the Far East and in Paris and in New York without ever having to leave your home. You are able to, see what the latest technologies are. And this group here, they are looking for, they are much about, because they're a worldly group, they're looking for this global inspiration, right? So their homes reflect this kind of a little bit more of a unique, might be one of the more fun interior trends, just because it is somewhat unique. I like the one thing, there was a data point I pulled from Pinterest where there was 2.3 billion home decor saves per year and 11 billion, home decor related pins on the platform. So that's a lot of pinning, and so there's a ton of interest in what's going on in the interior. One of the things, that third bullet point I wanted to point out, is this idea of touch-worthy design. And this is something that you might not expect from this up-and-coming generation of influencers, is that, but it makes sense when you think about it, because this generation truly is the first generation that was born literally. They've had a phone or an iPad or something in their hand from the moment they've been born. They've had a lifetime of holding and running their fingers over thin, smooth, hard surfaces. And what they're finding now that they're breaking out and they have a chance to do their own spaces in their own homes, they want and are craving stuff that engages their senses, all of them, like tactile, auditory, visual, sense. I mean, they want their senses engaged because in essence, they're really sensory deprived, and the only thing that's overstimulated is the visual, and that's just and not in a good way. So it's all about touch with it. So that's another thing you're going to see in all of these groups. This entire group as a whole is looking to have their senses engaged. And so this particular group tends to be going towards, we've like Hill Country Modern, the Modern Ranch, even in the coast of Spanish colonials. Who would have thought, we saw the shed style in the previous group. That was a HGTV Dream Home in 2018, right? It was a shed. Now, who would have thought, you would have thought this group would have wanted nothing but modern stuff. But here you're looking at things that are inspired from sheds and barns and old school, right? This group wants things that bring them back, that have a sense of history, or belonging, a little wear and tear use. They want, they want that story and that feel. And so you're looking at things like this Hill Country Modern and the ranch, and the ranch is making a big comeback. It's not your grandfather's or great grandfather's ranch from the post-World Wars, where they were just basically plain, cracker boxes that just sat next to each other, row after row. These are really cool, really fun, really interesting. And the ranches are one of those things that make a nice difference, because with all the multicultural, right, there's a big, the multicultural households now, where you've got not only your kids are still living at home, and the joke was a third of the millennials were still at home playing Xbox in the basement, but then now you've got your parents are now moving in with you. So these now you've got everything on one level, and it just makes things so much simpler. And it's making a huge comeback. So we get into this retro Terra trend here, and this is, and again, notice the color. We call it, that's the Terra kind of comes from the fact it's this. Like I said, it's kind of fun. It's strange, and somewhat you look at where we were at this very eclectic, lavish trend, which was very opulent, and you looked at the materials. It's very 70s-ish, retro 70s, and there's a lot of air of that, self-indulgence and like you deserve this, and in the materials and the textures and objects. It's kind of gone. It still has a 70s influence, but now it's gone a little bit more Mediterranean, based on some of the observations we've had. So it's just this really cool eclectic, and this is probably the most eclectic of the trends that we've got, as you start looking at some of the broader, I'll pull up these, the next slide here, these colors, you can see where the Terra gets its name because of these retro warm browns and golds. And you look at the highlight colors, or the accents are tangerines and cobalts and you've got black and white are still, heavy into the mix in a lot of these trends. Finishes, a lot of these, again, sun-baked brasses, things that look like they've have wear and tear, cinnabar stains, spiced walnuts, a lot of these windswept wood, stuff that looks like it's very natural. And even materials, these, you've got these interesting marbles and, very rough, earth, water textures are very prominent right now that we've been seeing. And, pattern-wise, again, it's kind of interesting. There's a lot of florals, but in this particular trend, they, manifest themselves in kind of that retro 70s vibe. Retro stripes, mosaic, these resin tortoise shells, a lot of fun. Like I said, it's definitely an interesting trend from a design perspective. It's one of my favorites. And then again, you're looking at just from the details down below, which are, rattan wrapping, and that's been seeing a big uptick, and a lot of sculptural shapes and chiseled edges, and here's this final summary slide where you kind of get a sense for where this group, which is not quite as modern as the group preceding the mood makers preceding them, but they're a little bit more on the casual end of the spectrum, which leads us to the more casual of the groups, which we call these guys conscious mixers. And kind of before I go on, I'll give you, I want you guys, as I'm talking, to take a look at the picture on the right and see if you can tell me what is unique and different about this picture. So, and I'll go ahead and talk. You can just take a look for a second. But here's this, conscious mixtures, right? We're looking about it is enlightened consumption. Now, this is one of the important things with this group is they're looking to go on a bit of a digital diet. So the interesting thing about this, and it is a hard image to find, you're seeing a millennial without the phone in her hand. And I've never seen my daughter in this position. But you'll notice she's still able, in her peripheral vision, she can see if anything happens with her phone. She's able to leap on it at a moment's notice. But there is the first hints of disengagement from this group. And so they're starting to understand that technology actually doesn't make our lives better in a lot of cases. It just makes us busier and more, haggard. So this is this craving by a whole group within this subset within this generation now that are looking for time to disengage and to get away. And it doesn't mean they want to go live in a log cabin and go hunt and fend for themselves. No, it just means that they are looking for spaces that engage their senses, but also provide some respite from the day-to-day connectivity that they're completely bombarded with. That all of us are on a daily basis. Elevations that this particular groups are looking at are, again, farmhouse. 15, 17 years ago, if somebody said, yeah, this up-and-coming generation is going to want sheds and farmhouses to live in, it's crazy. I mean, I think farmhouse, if I'm not mistaken, at least back in 2019, I think Craftsman was still the most ubiquitous and prevalent elevation out there, but the modern farmhouse was the fastest, was the most requested by this particular group when they were doing homes. And then we're looking at some of these, like the simple barn. It's kind of an offshoot of that farmhouse, and it is really all about trying to. It's something we're just it's an orbiting one. So we'll see if this one develops further. So this leads us into Scandinaire, which is this, excuse me, the streamlined luxe. And so again, this is very casual. So you're looking at fresh textures. You're looking at a focus on function and livable environments, right? This particular group wants to be relaxed and disengaged. And so you're trying to find this balance with this Japandi or Scandinaire. It's clean, but it's still soft and it's inviting. And so again, mid-tone pastels, not unlike what you saw with at the contemporary end. Slightly different though. These pastels are a little more muted, more grayed. You get some vibrant mid-tones. Have a lot of warm whites in this particular trend. And again, you'll see, and you kind of look at, if you've been noticing some of these, you'll notice there's hints of deco, there's hints of industrial, look at the lights and the clocks here. There's hints of mid-century mod in all of these images that I'm showing you in the materials, and the shapes and the details. you're looking at these patterns, that are all, which I love. Again, you'll see some of the florals even in here. There's a lot of florals that we've been looking at, along with broken plaids and geometrics. And like I said, there's lots of easy angles, lots of soft curves. Again, in here, that's one of the things that you're going to constantly see, moving forward, at least in the foreseeable near future. And here's that summary page of what we're calling Scan and Air. It's just very casual, really mixes that feminine and, with some splashes of cultural infusions, which you kind of see in all these trends. Now, the last one I've got here is called Energized Historian. And it's interesting. This is what you would typically say would be more the quote-unquote traditional end of the spectrum, but I could make an argument that what's kind of called traditional now is actually more fun and exciting than the modern end of the spectrum. And it's just this because of it's not your grandmother's traditional, right? It's colorful and it's fun and it can be crazy and it's about history with a twist, and you're looking to rethink how things are done, but still engage, repurpose, and you want that authenticity, which is whole generation. So this is actually such a strong trend right now with these groups. And you look at these elevations, they've got these modern Victorians, these textural Tudors. The Taylor Colonials are some of the main ones that still have more of the flat facades. But outside of that, most everything else, like I said, is moving in the X, Y, and Z directions. But, look how the Victorians are being cleaned up. And who would have thought that would be like a kind of a sought-after, elevation from these younger generations that are coming up. Even the Tudors, they're clean, but they're still right. They hark back to these different times, and I love these spaces. I mean, you talk about one of the great simple technology improvements, like wallpaper. Like I removed wallpaper for a summer job 1 year back when I was like in, I think maybe high school or maybe junior high. That's like one of the single worst jobs I've ever had, and I would just as soon rub my arm raw with a cheese grater and sprinkle lemon juice on it as opposed to removing wallpaper ever again. But the technology now, it's like you can put this wallpaper up and you don't like it, it practically comes down like it's just like a Post-it note. I mean, it's so simple. And so it's allowing, designers to do such amazing things with accent walls and on the ceilings and doing things with wallpaper that you can change out. It's just so cool. And I was like, where was that like 30 plus years ago? But anyway, I digress. You get these really cool, this trend really utilizes these. I mean, I try to throw a few of those images in on this slide, but it's kind of this relaxed meets classic. So the thing about this trend, this is counter to the minimalistic themes that you might have seen up above, especially with the mood makers and what they were doing. But this is all about, it's very relaxed. So nothing feels too precious. That's in all the trends, but especially, stereotypically, the traditional trend tends to lean a little bit more formal, a little bit more masculine, and it tends to be a little bit more stodgy, and this is not it. This is very relaxed and very casual and very livable. And so to get a sense for the colors here, we're looking at these, again, the blushes, and I like this is like, it's bold. These colors are bold and fun and vibrant and somewhat, in your face, and I love it because this is supposed to be traditional, right? And so, again, look at the metals. They look worn and tarnished, burnished. The mercury silvers and jelly glasses and all this fun stuff that's coming back. The white oaks and brown beaches, and brown is coming back, right? Brown is big in a big way, right? You can have the blacks and whites all you want, and those are always going to be strong. That's going to be. But now I love how the browns are coming back into play to warm these spaces back up, and they're being done in so smartly by designers nowadays, and it's so fun to watch. Pattern wise in this particular Energized Historian trend is, again, lots of trailing florals and botanicals, at least in this incarnation that we're kind of projecting. All these trends are kind of being projected out through this this fall and into the next spring. That's kind of where we've got our eyes on. So everything I'm talking about is kind of looking, at what we're kind of projecting is going to happen here, in the coming, year or so. And then here's that summary slide at the end of it, and just to kind of give you a sense for what this is all about. And so in the end here, I just threw these 5 together really, really quick, and none is really more important than the other. You're looking at a lot of re-energized historic motifs that are in play. You've got this beautiful embrace of new. It says sheens. It could be textures. It's right. You've got polished and glazed and satins and mattes, and so even if they're not tactily different, they're visually different. A lot of moody metals, like we've been talking about, soft textures and curves. Right, that last one. Lots of curves, lots of softness. It's like I said, it keeps things very livable and casual. And with that, I am done rambling. I appreciate all you guys listening. Those of you who stayed awake, I really appreciate you guys. So hopefully the wizard behind the curtain, Debbie, has a few questions for me, and that I'd be happy to at least attempt to answer. So let me know.
Thank you so much, Judd. That was so very interesting. There's been quite a few comments here about this is an excellent webinar. And of course, we do have questions, which is always good. So let's check this out. Hang on one second. So one of the first questions is, with the advent of grow cabinets, wall gardens, and 3D printed food, etc., what are you doing with regard to irrigation for indoor gardening?
Boy, I need that person in the studio, on the team. It's so funny. I love and hate questions like this because I can't really tell you specifics, but I can tell you there are some fun things in the works. Kind of revolving around indoor herb gardening, things like that. Handy around this, in and around your kitchen area. So without getting too much into specifics, where I'm going to go back to work and I'm going to get slapped on the wrist by my my boss. I love that. I love that line of thinking, because in our observational research, that's a lot of what we look at. That the whole food culture is so strong and ingrained with us, and I think with all of us being cooped up at home, you're going to see it's going to be even more important. You're going to see a tremendous spike in all that interest anyway, because you've got the time to get interested in food prep and cleanup and all that stuff. So there is. I can tell you that's a great question, and it's not just going to be us. There's going to be other companies that are doing some fun things that will really cater to that kind of thing, especially in the home.
Okay.
So it's an answer that wasn't an answer, so I apologize to whoever asked that.
But that's okay. So let's see. So just someone made a comment about consistency is so important in design, and this person put hashtag cabinet full template. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Yep. And then someone asked, are you familiar with the media outlet called Business of Fashion? It's an excellent resource for designers who follow trends.
We don't follow. We are on, obviously, we do a lot of our own. We're on several sites. WGSN is really big. I know a lot of my team, is clued into there and other various sites. So, but I haven't heard of that one in particular. I have not partied to it, but I'll have to write it down and check it out.
Okay. And then someone's asking, can you elaborate on what you mean by fitness bathroom when you were talking about the Scandinair trend?
The fitness bathroom, that's an overarching trend, and it's kind of funny because I don't even point it out anymore when I do these trend reports, because the wellness in general it's kind of the table stakes now. And so as you start looking into a lot of the things that especially in a bathroom space, a lot of the technology, there's a lot of focus in that space on health and wellness and it can be something as simple as water is such water and the products. Think about your bathroom, right? It can be invigorating or it can be relaxing, and it can it has so much bearing on your emotional well-being, and there's so much focus in bringing those senses into play, whether it's through scent or, I mean, look at the technology. You can there's development of toilets that can make and analyze and send you data to your phone. You can we can keep track of, if you wanted to. There's going to be apps developed that and it'll tell you your water usage and what's the making your house more efficient. It'll talk to your water heater to teach it how to be better respond to times of day in the homes. And so a lot of it with wellness, it's also goes into the quality of the water, right, that you are ingesting and letting wash over your body. So that's something. It's basically table stakes now. And I mean, years ago we actually had a trend called out that was like health and wellness, and it never ended. Like it was, we had a trend. One of these trends was like 5 years in a row, and finally just like that's just mean, that's just table stakes. So you're going to see a lot of the plumbing products and bathing industries are just going to be continual focus on health and wellness in those spaces.
Okay, and then there was another comment here about the Internet of Things, which they were wondering if you're aware of that.
Oh, who's not aware? I mean, I'm sure Alexa's recording all of this right now, so I expect a full report from her on how I did, and at any moment. But yeah, between her and Siri, are you kidding me? Yeah, I mean, it's like it's so interconnected. I'm old school. I like to stay unplugged as much as I can, but I do. But I say that, but yet most of my house is all voice, in a lot of capacity. So it's it's kind of interesting. It's all connected. Like I said, I alluded to it in my previous answer about some of the things like we do is we can help. The way all devices are talking to each other, we can help. Homes are going to become very efficient. Your water bills and your heating bills are going to go down as a result of a lot of the embedded technology that's going to be happening in products in the coming years. And and a wellness standpoint, right? There are materials and there are finishes that are being worked on by us and other companies that are antimicrobial and will So we're approaching this from this holistic view of health and wellness, and and the connectivity is a part of it. I mean, it can be as little or as much as you want in your house, but it's here to stay. And I think in the end, it's definitely going to be for the better. Although Big Brother aspect does kind of weird me out sometimes.
I'm with you on that for sure, Judd. Big Brother does kind of weird me out too.
I know.
So someone's asking about finishes. So like, I'm assuming they're talking mostly plumbing finishes. So do you have any idea of what could be on the horizon in the future?
It's kind of interesting. There's always going to be spikes and variations in some of the finishes there. I mean, we try to cover, and I hit upon a lot of the stuff in the trend report. So as long as, I think most everybody, you're going to have your basic warm brasses covered. There's not the gold tone. You'll have the warm golds, but not the rose golds, right? The rose golds, there's still a little bit there, but that's really plateaued and is gone. So you're gonna see some of those kind of spikes every once in a while, but for the most part, you're going to have these. For the foreseeable future, especially because of what this group is looking at and looking for, you're going to have a lot of these more old style, old worldish kind of finishes, but maybe done with a different spin. Like I said, that's where you're getting into more of the silvers are getting darker. So instead of and don't get me wrong, especially above core, right? Everything core is chrome or stainless steel. Stainless steel is going to remain incredibly popular, and chrome is going to remain incredibly popular. And of course, because of the Art Deco component, that's still in here, chrome is very key, as is the brushed nickels in there. But once you look at the new trends, you've been seeing those over the past few years, getting warmer. The black chromes, the warmer, much warmer stainless steels. the gold tones are all warm and like mottled and muted and hammered finishes, things like that. Even you'll get a little bit more of the copper undertones. The bronzes. I mean, matte black is one of those. We're seeing finishes now, and I'll use matte black as an example. That it's a great finish because it can play in any number of spaces from the more modern to the more traditional, because you're seeing, a matte black at the modern end of the spectrum, which you typically think of it where it's at. But that matte black is, it's replacing wrought iron and the bronzes at the more traditional end of the spectrum. And you're coupling that with some of the cleaner forms, and that's what's making these spaces fresh. It's really not that much new. You got old world finishes on new style, on new geometries, and newfangled finishes on very traditional geometries, and that's that kind of eclecticism and bringing your personality into the space that we're just going to see continue on.
Okay, and then someone said they didn't see a lot of bling or sparkly things in the trends. Do you think crystal is phasing out?
To agree, yeah. So you had a lot of that in the past, like the past 2 years. We've saw some of that, and I think you saw, especially in that 70s retro eclectic trend that we were looking at. That's kind of went more Mediterranean. The thing that I expect to see, and we're working on another the next updated trend report. It'll be out in another month or so. But just of what's happened in the past few months with COVID and all of the nesting and cocooning, I think you're going to really expect to see, if you kind of hark back to what happened back during the crash back in, what was it, 06, 07, and 08, where you're going to see the color palettes are going to go back to being, I think they'll become muted again. You're going to see a little bit less of that opulence. We were in a pretty prosperous period prior to this February, March timeframe, and so it'll be interesting. So I expected to see it come back, but what's interesting, it's not like the blingy stuff so much, but we are seeing some of the fun stuff like just glass and lucite and acrylic. It is all over the place. So there's still some fun, and there's still some use of different materials of glass, but it's a little less about the bling now. Or if it is going to be used, it might be black crystal or something to that effect.
Sounds decadent.
Yes. So that's a little bit decadence in there.
So someone was asking about, where do you get the trends of eclectic, lavish, traditional, collected, modern, raw, and casual, refined?
We just make those names up. It's like
okay.
we literally we've got a great trend spotting firm that we work with, and like I said, we'll put a lot of the imagery that they're doing because they travel 365 every day of the week, and then we're bringing our own imagery into it, and we kind of customize these, and then we're just most of the time we're just it's funny, some names come really easy, and then some names we'll sit there and debate for like hours on, like what do you think captures it. I still remember years and years ago we named a trend, it was like called pretty with an exclamation point, and I got outvoted by my team and it got named that, and I hated that entire time period. I had to give those presentations because I had to say this trend is pretty, so after that I put my foot down. There was no more of those kind of trend names. So
exactly.
Exactly.
So since we're talking about trends, someone's asking, what is the trend cycle length that you may not be able to answer this, but that you plan and design products to satisfy, and also, is your trends report public?
Trends report is not public. That's where you're just getting snippets of it. As you can imagine, there's a lot of blood, sweat, tears, effort, and treasure that goes into creating the trend reports. So we're trying to make them public. So I've just given you snippets here. We update. We travel throughout the year. So inspiration happens the entire year, but we update our reports. We do 2 large updates, so every 6 months. So we'll do a big update every 6 months. And I used to do them quarterly, but you really didn't see that much movement from quarter to quarter. But I found when you looked at a 6 month, you saw that those increments, there was movement in the trends that was more easily identifiable. And, for what we do, our products, it takes us anywhere from 18 months to 24 months from napkin sketch to getting something rolled off the line. This doing it at the 6 month time period seemed to work best for our cadence and how we launch stuff. So, like I said, the inspiration happens all the time, and of course, the entire team is always clued in with other trend resources and outlets, so it's not like this is our only Bible, but it's definitely it just and I look at trends. Not in a literal sense as well. And I don't have my team. So if we see if chevrons are all the rage right now, or florals are all the rage, that doesn't mean go out and design, a bunch of handles or suites with, florals or chevrons all over them, or doing geometries that mimic that. We just use it. It's like suggestion. It's like a paint brush, right? It's just kind of directional. It's to give you a feel. It's a vibe. And then you couple that with your inspiration, and you try and find something that has that vibe or that feel to match those trends that we're seeing, that people are gravitating towards these certain things, that we're trying to, at least aesthetically, put the human factors and ergonomics aside. That's going to be always accorded for, but just aesthetically, we're trying to do things that are going to engage people at that aesthetic level, that just have that look, that feel, that vibe, that, hey, they're going to want to bring it to their homes, in the next few years.
Great. And then I have two more questions, if you're still able to stay with us, Judd.
I am.
Okay, thank you. So we're going back to the Internet of Things, and someone's asking, do you see technology access points like smart speakers, touch screens as design agnostic? Or will these touch points need iterations that fit with each style trend?
God, I hope we don't just put, flat screens with everything. I mean, that's like one of my biggest pet peeves on a lot of current modern design and technology right now. You're going to see iterations, and you're going to see technology integrated. Like I said, one of the slides I showed up above was how you're already seeing that movement where you're seeing more analog interaction approaches to a lot of high-end technology. So I hate when somebody just slaps basically it looks like an iPhone on the side of something, or embeds an iPhone in something. And it's just it's interesting because there's an air of familiarity about that now, but it's just so unelegant in its approach. And the technology, with the way that circuit boards are working, and how we can do things with the flexible screens are coming more into play. And the world is wide open, and it's going to continue to allow us as product designers to really integrate and make things look interesting, because I don't want to ever walk into a room and see 4 objects that all have an iPhone just hanging off of them, Yeah. So I want those objects. If I've got if I have a Victorian era home, and I've got a Victorian era, basin and faucet there, I don't want this flat screen eyesore hanging off my Victorian. I want it integrated in such a way that it looks seamless and it's intuitive. So, just my 2 cents.
That's great. That's great. And then the final one here, I wish we could keep going, but I know we're kind of stretched for time at this point. So someone said that they see a lot of artisan-looking accessories in natural materials, concrete, metal, and wood finishes. Do you think that independent artisan makers will be on the rise?
I hope so. Boy, that's like my favorites. It's making it manufacturers. So, it's making it easier for us to do a lot of that stuff. But as I mentioned, even up above, like we did the, I don't care. We're I'm gonna, you can foresee the day where you're gonna have people will be able to, you know, build. Maybe they'll design their own faucet. We'll provide the basics, and you just gotta cover a hole in the sink this big, and just gotta cover this kind of valves. Maybe there could be a day when you're just sending out a valve set, and you have people actually designing their own products and able to attach them, and so. From a materials perspective, I love. I hope that I love when you get that's what makes your house the home, right? That's when you're bringing in those personal spaces. You're traveling, you come across these great artisans and these artists, and they're doing cool stuff, and it fits your personality, and you love it, and you integrate that into your space, and hopefully, like I said, by us trying to provide a template, you can do that. I am a big proponent for wanting people to be able to add their own flair and their own touch to whatever we're doing. So
that's great. And then just a final one, I have actually one that I think is what people will find interesting. So as far as generational trends, do you think that baby boomers still have an influence on design at this point in time?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, there's still a lot of boomers. I mean, if you take into account I think millennials actually outnumbered boomers even at their height right now. It's such a large generation, but boomers are still very influential because they listen to their grandkids, and so boomers still have there's a lot of money there, and even when they're downsizing, there's a lot of remodeling stuff that's happening, but they're also very in the know in terms of design and fashion, and they are clued in with their kids and their grandkids, and they listen to what the millennials are doing, and they're paying attention to that, and as such, it's kind of interesting because boomers are almost an extension of the millennial group, certain
That's
swaths of that.
Right, because some of them could be parents or grandparents to them, right?
Exactly.
Yes, yes. Well, I just want to thank you so much, Judd. This has been so interesting, and I want to thank Peter Wells for being with us today, and once again thank Amarok for sponsoring today's session and all of June's sessions, and all of you out there in the audience for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Debbie. Thanks,
You're
Peter.
welcome.
Thank you.